everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley and today I'm doing the It's Finally Fall book tag. Last fall, so I'll leave a link to that video as well so you can go check out last year's version if you want. I'm going to be recommending all new books in this edition this year. I didn't want to repeat any of the books. It's all going to be brand new. So if you really like the tag and the answers and you think the book recommendations are fun, I have 2 years worth of recommendations now for really good cozy fall reads that fall within these prompts. So let's go ahead and get started. The first question says, in fall the air is crisp and clear. Name a book with a vivid setting. This is one of my favorite questions because I love atmosphere in books so much. Atmosphere is so important to me, and especially if it's going to be a cozy fall read, it needs to have a great vivid setting with really strong atmosphere. And so for this question, I would recommend the book Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. I just recently read this book. It just recently came out, and I was so excited for this book because I really loved the other book from this author that I've read, Migrations, and this one sounded like it was going to have similar kind of vibes, and it definitely did, and I really loved it. So this is a story about this woman named Inti Flynn who decides to move to Scotland to help rehabilitate and rewild a group of wolves. And so her job is to take care of these wolves and help them acclimate into their new environment and get them familiar with the land so that they can go back out into the wild and just help the overall ecosystem in the area. She ends up facing a lot of pushback from the town. The town's really afraid of having wolves just roaming the wild because of their children, and a lot of people own sheep for their farming in the area, and so they're very hesitant to have the wolves be there in the first place. So she's already facing a lot of backlash from them, and then someone in the town ends up dead, and it appears that the wolves may have done it, and so Inti wants to protect the wolves. She doesn't want people to think it was the wolves, and so there's a mystery aspect to this book of who is killing these people. Is it the wolves? What's going on? There's also an aspect of her relationship with her sister, who is also going through some really difficult times in her life, and she's also trying to sort of rehabilitate her sister. And then there's also a relationship that ends up taking place with Inti. She starts having these feelings for this man in the town, and it also seems like he could potentially be involved with the person that died. So there's a lot going on in this book. There is a mystery aspect, a romance aspect, and then just a really beautiful nature and environmental aspect to the book. And the setting is just so vivid and so beautiful, and there's so much talk about the wolves and nature and Scotland and the town and the mountains that they're out in, and it's snowy, and it is just amazing, beautiful. Highly recommend. It's also pretty short. It's really easy to get through quickly, and it's a really beautiful read. The next prompt is, nature is beautiful, but also dying. Name a book that is beautifully written, but also deals with a heavy topic like loss or grief. For this prompt, I have to recommend The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is the perfect fall read. If you have not read this book yet, now is the time to do it. Definitely pick it up for the fall. This is a story about a woman named Addie LaRue who lives in the 1700s in France, and more than anything, she wants the freedom to just live her life how she wants. She doesn't want to have to worry about getting married to fit in with society and putting up with a man. She doesn't want to do that. But her family definitely wants her to fit in these boxes, and she ends up praying to the gods that you shouldn't pray to and making a bargain with a dark god slash devil-ish like guy. And in that bargain, she ends up getting the ability to live forever, but it comes with a cost, and that cost is that no one she meets will ever be able to remember her. So this book follows her through 300 years of living life, wandering around, facing challenges with people not being able to remember her, feeling very lonely and isolated. So it has a very morose tone throughout that, but it's also so beautifully written. And then one day somebody remembers Addie, and that turns her entire story around. I just love this book. It is just the perfect dose of fantasy. It's not too heavy fantasy. It's just like that light magical touch in a reality setting. Most of this is set in Europe, then there's a lot set in New York City as well, and it is just such a beautiful book, but also such a sad book, such a sad story to just be wandering around with Addie for 300 years as she consistently is forgotten about, and she can't find love, and she can't find friends and family. She's just on her own. And then the way her life changes when she meets someone who can remember her is just so beautiful. And I highly recommend this, especially for the fall. The next prompt says, fall is back to school season. Share a nonfiction book that taught you something new. In the last year since I've done this prompt, I've only read a handful of nonfiction books, and most of those are more memoir focused, and so they're not really focused on teaching you something new. The one nonfiction book that I have read that is focused on teaching you something new in the last year is Wisdom from a Humble Jellyfish and Other Self-Care Rituals from Nature by Ronnie Shaw. The whole concept of this book is about taking lessons from the animal kingdom and how animals live and how they take care of themselves. As the title suggests, it's based off of jellyfish. The whole kind of concept here is that jellyfish, in order to move forward in the ocean, have to go through a series of like contracting and relaxing, and they take a lot of frequent breaks. So that lesson translates to life as a human, with the only way to move forward is to relax and take those times for the breaks. Every chapter is like a different animal and a different lesson you can learn from them. It's kind of cheesy, but also just pretty fun. I listened to this one as an audiobook on Scribd. I really enjoyed it. It was a good little short listen. It didn't necessarily teach me anything new that I didn't already know about self-care, but it was kind of cool to learn about different ways that animals behave and kind of taking that as a reminder to also take time to take care of yourself. The next prompt says, in order to keep warm, it's good to spend some time with the people we love. Name a fictional family, household, or friend group that you'd like to be a part of. For this prompt, I have to say Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire. I know I'm like the last person in the universe to finally start reading this series, but I finally picked it up about a month or two ago, and I am so glad I did, because it is such a charming, delightful read and such a great cast of characters that I would just love to be a part of. This book has so much whimsy and it is so joyful, but it's also got heavier topics and definitely examines things to do with life and just the realities of life. But it's just got a lot of charm, and it's a really great read for the fall if you, like me, have not picked this up yet until this year. This is the first book in the Wayward Children series, which is a series that follows these children who end up going through these magical portals, and they end up in these beautiful, wonderful worlds. Every world is a little bit different and unique to them, but this book follows children who have made their way back out of those portals into the real world and are grieving a lot with the fact that they can't get back to those magical worlds and figuring out how to cope with being in the real world. And so this one woman who herself once long ago went through a portal and ended up coming back has started a house for these wayward children to help them be around other children with shared experiences and learn how to cope and handle the real world. This book in particular follows a girl, Nancy, who has just arrived at the home, and once she arrives, very dark, bad things start happening in the house, and it becomes sort of a mystery to figure out who is the cause of these bad things that are happening at the house. In particular, there's a character in this book named Sumi, who I just absolutely want to be best friends with. She is so funny and fun and just says the most absurd things. There's also these siblings, Jack and Jill, who just have such unique personalities, and I think would be so fun to just go hang out in this house with this group of wayward children. The next prompt says, the colorful leaves are piling up on the ground. Show us a pile of fall-colored spines. And so this is what I have come up with. So here we have The Trouble with Hating You by Sajni Patel, The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon, Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, and Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino. Of these books, I've read two of them and I have not read the other two of them. So The Trouble with Hating You, I have yet to read, but this is a romance book. That sounds really good. Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a huge epic fantasy with dragons that I have in fact read. I have an entire reading blog dedicated to reading this absolute beast of a book. I definitely did not love this book, but it felt like such an accomplishment to finish it that I feel like I gotta keep the book just to remember that I did this. I did in fact make it through. Razorblade Tears, this is a thriller book about these two fathers whose sons were murdered, and then they go to seek revenge for their sons' murders. I just recently read this book, so if you want to know my thoughts on it, you can check out my most recent thriller reading blog. And then Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino is a nonfiction book that says it is reflections on self-delusion. Haven't read this one yet. Think it'll be really interesting, just haven't prioritized it yet. The next prompt says, fall is the perfect time for some storytelling by the fireside. Share a book wherein somebody is telling a story. For this one, I have to recommend a book about a book, and that is The Plot by Jean Humph Corlitz. This is a thriller book that follows this author who was once super successful and had really great success with one of the books he published, and he has not been able to seek that same success since. So he decides to go be a professor and teach writing, and he ends up encountering a student who says he has this brilliant idea for a plot. It's going to be super famous. Oprah's going to want to pick it up. They're going to want to make it into movies. And he thinks it's going to be the next big thing. The professor is like, okay, yeah, this is a pretentious dude who has all this energy and all these dreams, but it's never going to happen. Kind of forgets about it, moves on with his life. Years pass, and then he decides to look that guy back up and see if he ever did get that success. He's like, oh, I might as well just check in on that student and see what happened. And he realizes that guy's dead. And so he decides to steal the plot of that story and write it himself. And he ends up being incredibly successful with that story. It is true. It was a really great plot. It is getting picked up in movies and everyone's talking about it. It's everyone's celebrity book club pick for the month. But then he starts getting anonymous messages that someone knows he is a thief and that is not his story. So then it becomes like a cat and mouse game of this person chasing after him saying, I know you're a fraud, you stole that story, and him trying to figure out who's saying this and also like keep himself safe and also not ruin his entire reputation for stealing this story. But throughout, you also get portions of the book that he wrote, the story that he stole, and that like amazing, wonderful, mind-blowing plot. And so it's a story within a story, it's a story about a story, and it is also just a really good fall thriller. The next prompt says, the nights are getting darker. Share a dark, creepy read. I have two recent recommendations to share with you. One is super, super dark, and that is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This is a story about these two women who meet over AIM, instant messaging, email, and the entire book is just their conversations over email and instant messaging. They meet because one of the women is selling an apple peeler online, the other one offers to buy it, and then from there they end up in a very dark, creepy, toxic sort of relationship, and dark things happen. This is the grossest book I've ever read, so if you really want something dark and out there, this is what I would recommend. But if you want something not so gross but still dark and creepy, I would recommend Blanky by Keelan Patrick Burke. Now granted, I didn't love this novella, it's not my favorite story, but it is pretty dark and creepy. It's got some dark imagery in it, and it is a story about this father who loses his child. His baby ends up dying really early, and that causes him and his wife to sort of separate, and as they're like grieving the loss of their child. And then one day the dad up in the nursery finds the baby's blanket, and it's the blanket that they buried the baby with, and then it becomes like a haunted blanket type story. Definitely creepy, has a weird kind of twisty ending that I didn't really love, but it has strong writing throughout, and it definitely has some creepy imagery to it. The next prompt says, the days are getting colder. Name a short, heartwarming read that could warm up somebody's cold and rainy day. And for this one, I have a bit of an unexpected answer probably, and that is The House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Mallerman. This is a story about these two teenagers who on their first date go out on this lake, and they are paddling through on this boat, and they end up coming upon this really private spot where they find a house that is submerged in the lake. And then the story is just about them falling in love and exploring this place together. It's very eerie and creepy because the house is like perfectly furnished, intact, things aren't floating around in weird ways that they shouldn't be. It seems like a house was just placed at the bottom of the lake and everything else is normal, and so it makes no sense. But they're not really asking a lot of questions about it. They're kind of just exploring this new thing together as they're exploring their new relationship together. And so it really has just like a really tender feel to it. While it is like a horror that has the creepy horror elements in it as well, it ends up just being this really heartwarming, heartfelt read that is also pretty short and would make a pretty good recommendation for the fall. So if you like the weirder things, the more ambiguous books, doesn't really lay everything out for you, then I think you would really like this one, and I would recommend checking it out. The next prompt says, fall returns every year. Name an old favorite that you'd like to return to soon. I am the absolute worst about rereading books. I never make time to reread my favorite books, even though I always want to. I just always get caught up in reading new releases, and I know that probably won't change about me for a while, especially not before the end of this year, because I have so many books I'm trying to read before the end of the year. But an old favorite of mine that I definitely want to reread eventually, although it won't be soon, is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And this is the new special edition that Illumicrate just came out with that I am just obsessed with. It's got this shiny silvery look to it with accents of red. It's got a little tassel-y bookmark. It's got sprayed edges around all the sides. It has beautiful end papers and a letter from the author. And I probably wouldn't read this actual edition because I don't want to ruin it. And I have another edition that's a paperback that I would kind of like to mark through and annotate maybe and save as like the copy I kind of ruined because I love this book so much. But if I was going to reread a book, it would definitely be this one. This is a story about this circus that arrives at midnight. It is this traveling circus. You never know where it's going to be or when, and people are really enamored with it. There are amazing characters in this story. The atmosphere is beautiful. The writing is poetic and lyrical and beautiful. And it is a love story. It is about these two magicians who are pitted against one another in this competition and end up having an attraction for each other as well. And it's such a good fall read. I wish I could reread it this fall, but I know I'm just not going to be able to make time for it. But if I could, this is the one book I would prioritize a reread of. The next prompt says, fall is the perfect time for cozy reading nights. Share your favorite cozy reading accessories. I don't really have a lot of cozy reading accessories. I'm a pretty basic person. I like to throw on a cozy ambience ASMR atmosphere YouTube video in the background. I like to burn some candles. I like to snuggle up in a cardigan or a blanket. I would like to be a person who uses my book sleeves more because I have a ton of book sleeves, but I don't really use them a lot. But they do kind of create a sort of cozy feel. I have a new recent addition to my life, which is a Galaxy star projection light, and I really like to turn that on while I'm reading because it just creates this really beautiful light display in the room that really just sets the tone. So I don't really have anything special beyond that, but that's sort of what I like to do to set the mood for a cozy reading day. And the very last prompt is spread the autumn appreciation and tag some people. I'm just gonna say, like I said last year, if you saw this video and you feel inclined to do it, consider yourself tagged. I would love to watch your videos, so if you watch my video and it inspires you to do it yourself, definitely tag me in it, let me know, and I'll go check it out as well. But I always feel bad calling out explicit people because, I don't know, I just don't want to like put that on people that they feel like they have to make the video. So if you want to make the video, if you saw it and you want to consider yourself tagged, then consider yourself tagged. So that is it for the Finally Fall book tag. It is not really fall here yet for me. I cannot wait for it to be consistently fall weather so I can wear sweaters and hoodies and really just enjoy all of the cozy things. Maybe doing this tag will help manifest the nice fall weather coming soon for me, but I hope it is at least starting to feel like fall wherever you are. I hope you're getting to enjoy the cozy fall vibes, and I hope you enjoyed these book recommendations that all make a really good fit for a cozy fall read. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!